broadcasting company, has emphasized that in the issues of the development of the country and the definition of its foreign course, he will not allow no one from abroad to pressurize, and first of all will be listening to the opinion of the Ukrainian people. According to Petro Poroshenko, Ukraine has fulfilled all its obligations stipulated by the Minsk Protocol and is doing everything not to abandon the residents of Donbass. Petro Poroshenko said that as of today, all the international missions, including the mission of monitoring of the OSCE, are officially confirming that the agreements are violated by the terrorists who are shelling peaceful residential blocks, international monitors, and do not allow the peace process to come back to Donbass. The president of Ukraine is convinced that Ukraine is ready to take part in building the new security system, which will be aimed not against someone, including Russia, but will have the aim to protect our territory and to have efficient mechanisms to preserve peace, the president said. The situation in the anti-terrorist operation zone is characterized by the lessening in the number of shellings, but increase in the intensity. We see the rise in the movement of Russian military machinery without license plates or insignia in the direction of the Ukrainian border. Besides, we observed the movement of transportation of personnel by the military transportation planes to Taganrog in Rostov region. There's also the activization of combat actions immediately after the so-called humanitarian convoy from Russia. The most intense fighting was around Donetsk airport. For 3 days in a row, the militants were attacking the strategic object, and we have information that Russian commandos are taking part in the stopping the airport, but this does not help our enemy. The enemy is sustaining huge losses, and the airport, both old and new terminals, are under the control of the Ukrainian military. No one has blown anything up. This is a fake information. I emphasize once again, Donetsk airport is totally under control of the Ukrainian military. Also, in the vicinity of Donetsk, from artillery and mortars, they have more than once shelled the positions of Ukrainian forces next to settlements Opitne, Piski, Georgievka, Massimilyanivka, Avdiivka. In Avdiivka and Opitne, our artillery has repelled the enemy's attack, and from multiple rocket launchers, Grad and mortars, they have twice shelled our positions next to the village of Tunenke. The shellings by militants have intensified on the Luhansk direction, next to the settlements Stanitsa Luhanska, Artema, Makarova, Geivka, and the city of Shastya. They shelled our positions from artillery and mortars. And next to the village of Nizhny Teple, they have twice shelled our positions from multiple rocket launchers Grad. On the Bakhmutivka highway, after 3 shellings from Grad, they tried to attack our positions next to the village of Sokilniki, but the attack was repelled. On the Baltsova direction, the positions of the Ukrainian forces were shelled from grenade launchers and fired from small firearms next to Nikishina, Mala Orlivka, and Debaltseva. Mariupol direction, from Grad batteries, they have shelled our positions next to the village Starognativka, and from artillery and mortars, they have shelled our points, our checkpoints next to Novolaspa, Mykolaievka, Bogdanikov, Pavlopil. 14 kilometers away from Berdyansk port, the bodyguards have observed the flight of one drone. The situation in Mariupol is calm and controlled. Over the last 24 hours, 3 Ukrainian military were killed and 14 were wounded. Yesterday, at the testing grounds of the National Guards next to Kiev, a test drive of a new armored vehicle made by the Ukrainian manufacturer Praktika was completed. The working title of the armored vehicle is Kozak 2014. After the test drive, it was shelled and fired upon from the distance of 50 meters. The armored vehicle has sustained the firing, and the officers and fighters who were on the front line made a list of remarks and their additions to the prototype. We draw the attention of journalists that from today we have new rules for the work of journalists in the anti-terrorist operation zone. The movement in the dangerous zone will be happening only in the accompaniment of military, the officers of the press service. Your first step is still the accreditation with the Security Service of Ukraine, and immediately in the zone of anti-terrorist operation, the journalists are accepted by the Press Center of Anti-Terrorist Operation. To start working, the journalists should send a application to ato14@ukr.net, a list of the group, the license numbers of the car, contact telephone numbers of the journalist and the editor. And we hope that this is a temporary measure and they are applied only with a view to the security and safety of journalists. And we have some information that there's a hunt being launched for our colleagues, journalists in the anti-terrorist operation zone, so please warn them to be careful. Over the last week, the Ukrainian Ukroboronprom state concern have repaired 13 armored vehicles, including 7 APCs and 2 cars. Also, the concern has restored main combat tanks T-64, 4 of them, and at the moment all the vehicles are being sent to the anti-terrorist operation. 2 enterprises of the concern have been commissioned to repair heavy aircraft, and for instance the state enterprise Konotopsky Aviaremontny Zavod will re-equip the Mi-24P helicopter. And by the 1st of December, within the framework of the event, support the Ukrainian army, 151.722 million hryvnia was donated from legal entities and individuals to the special accounts of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. And with the help of calls to the unified mobile number 565, the Ukrainian army has got 36,908,000 hryvnia. Besides, the accounts of Ministry of Defense have got foreign currency in the equivalent of 3,166,500 hryvnia. And as we know from the intelligence, more and more new arrivals to Donbass among the Russian mercenaries are refusing to fight the Ukrainian army, because most of those who are coming to Donbass from Russia want only a quick enrichment by robbing people. They do not want to wage war for any idea. And there's a increase of internal conflicts between gangs and the so-called leadership of the self-proclaimed DLNR and DNR. And over the last 24 hours, the number of IDPs from the anti-terrorist operation zone to other regions amounted to almost 2,000. In general, there's 480.6 thousand people who were resettled from the zone of anti-terrorist operation zone, and during the last 24 hours, the pyrotechnical units of the State Emergency Service detected and defused 205 units of ammunition, including 34 artillery projectiles, 15 combat grenades, and mines. The deputy from the Democratic Party in Europe Parliament, Gianni Pittella, said that if Russia does not fulfill the agreements that were reached in Minsk, the Euro Parliament will be made to review the sanctions and apply new, more decisive steps. I cannot exclude any option of solution of this issue because if Russia does not behave adequately to the full according to the agreements, we will have to review the sanctions and opt for more decisive steps. The Commissioner of Euro Commission on European Policy of Neighborhood and Talks, Johannes Hahn, said that the sanctions applied by European Union against Russian Federation act correctly. He said that I see that sanctions are working because the economic situation in Russia is worsening not only because of the lowering of prices for oil. Have a look at the fall of ruble, the outflow on investment, the acceleration of inflation, the deficit of some goods and commodities and foodstuff. This is very, very much felt, for instance, in Moscow.
Do you know what are the losses of Russian special purpose troops in Donetsk airports, and what do you know about the situation near Stanitsa Luhanska? Because there's information about the big concentration of military equipment there. Because it's the third day that very active actions have been conducted near Donetsk airport. There's no chance to go and know how many killed and wounded people are there. The main task is to maintain this facility, and that's what our people are doing successfully. As to Stanitsa Luganska, there is a concentration of equipment there, but the analysis of the situation is made, and additional forces are moved there from Ukrainian side to adequately react to possible attacks of the enemy. The question from foreign. I can in Russian. Swiss TV. I have a question. This week, there will be the meeting of the ministers of foreign affairs of OSCE countries in Switzerland. Can you give an assessment of the work of OSCE in general under the presidency of Switzerland? And what's your attitude to the fact that the next presidency will be Serbian? Actually, the fact of the presence of representatives of OSCE on the territory of Ukraine, especially in the zone of anti-terrorist operation and in the zone which is temporarily under control of the militants and terrorists, is the fact that OSCE is executing its mission. The results and the assessment of the action of the mission is made by mission itself, which sends to the zone of conflict its representatives, and they get reports. We do have information that helps us to analyze the situation in the zone of ATO. Despite the fact who will be presiding in the mission, this is the organization which is a collective body, and it fully corresponds to the tasks and intentions with which it was set up. And we really appreciate that its representatives are now in Ukraine and are actively fulfilling their mission. Thank you. Ukrainian news. Can you please give more information about Donetsk airport? Is that true that Ukrainian military destroyed the old terminal of the airport so that the terrorists cannot get this part of the airport? And how long can this maintaining of the airport continue? The airport will be maintained till there is the task given to maintain it. And as to your first question, there was no explosion, no blowing off, special blowing off of this old terminal. Now there are fights going on there, and there's no sense to blow off the old terminal because it's one of the protective facilities for our military. And that is why to blow off their own facility, there's no sense. Ukraine channel, you say that Ukrainian, Russian mercenary, they refuse to fight. Where do you get this information from? Do you have any video evidence that this is the operative information which is classified? There's evidence there are people who agreed to cooperate with our side, and from the reasons you can understand, we do not disclose these sources, but that is the information which is confirmed publicly known. Any other questions? Once you... In the beginning, you described the situation that the number of shellings is decreased, but they have become more intensive and they're concentrated around the airport. What does that mean? Is that the new situation? That means that the new humanitarian convoy arrived and the terrorists received ammunition for heavy weaponry, for Grad systems and howitzers, and this way they can increase their intensity. Talking about number of shellings, that does not mean that there are more, that they're talking about numbers, that could be more, but talking about intensity, if now there are fewer cases of shelling, but they are more intensive. In 5 hours, this could be 5 shellings, and there could be, but in 2 hours there could be 1 shelling, but all these 2 hours they will be just shelling non-stop, and the attack is now longer in time. Any attack is now longer in time and in concentration, in might, and intensity. I would also like to ask about OSCE drones. Are they there? Are they doing anything? Is there information about what they do? Do they provide any intelligence data? I cannot talk to you about the use of the OSCE drones, but every day we do get reports. Thank you, and tomorrow at 12:30 will be another